And welcome back to some Overwatch 3v3s here on day 2 of the Melbourne Esports Open. We are once again, of course, live from Margaret Court Arena. I am Matt Pixie Carroll, joined again now by Kevin Averill Walker.
We're getting to serious business now. We're into the lower bracket. There has been a team qualified already, I believe, into the grand finals, which is Manticore. We saw earlier today really. Manticore had a great showing so far in 3v3 Lockout Elimination on the variety stage.
And now we're going to see who's going to be coming up against Manticore in the finals a little bit later on today. We've still got a couple more games to go for that, so I believe we have our next one getting lined up just about now, and we'll get to see if we have another kind of like talent kind of team coming through. Like Manticore were quite refreshing, I think.
Well, that's the thing, because Manticore is not a team where you'd expect, like, they don't, from as far as I can tell, they're not stacked with contenders level talent or anything like that. Right now it's going to be Electric Boogaloo versus the Tradesman.
Oh, I'm loving these team names. Tradesman and Electric Boogaloo. Ah, it's beautiful. And I'm curious as to what these guys are going to run. I think we've now, like, everyone's getting a bit more of a handle on, like, what works, what doesn't, how to conserve your picks across the lockout part of this, and how to handle everything.
Right, so let's take a look at compositions here. Tradesman going to be running McCree, Diva, and the Brigida. We've seen, like you said, a lot more of this maturity in terms of what is exactly working. Teams have been learning, we've been learning this entire time, and we do put a lot of premium so far on the pharmacy combos, but also McCree has been a pretty decent pick. This is going to be composition for Tradesman, where they will want to rely purely on the McCree damage. The other two players here on Diva and Brigida looking to protect them mainly.
Tradesmen are having a bit of a tough situation here. They're actually all very split up and spread out, and I think the Diva might even still be in the spawn room. And you see this. Okay, there we go. They've been able to regroup now. The Diva's having a little bit of a tough time. Not sure what's going on there. But Electric Boogaloo, on the other hand, all set up, all grouped up, and looking ready to fight.
Both teams are kind of looking for poke damage here. McCree on one side for Tradesman. It's mainly the Soldier on the Electric Boogaloo side. Actually, the Electric Boogaloo side with that blue team, they have a lot more damage output from range. So for the Tradesman, they got to look for early point control. As the point unlocks, that's when they're looking to fight.
Putting the point down there. That's the thing, Tradesman can just kind of sit pretty here and force Electric Boogaloo down to them. It's quite a nice move that they've made, because honestly, sure, Electric Boogaloo are wanting to spam out. They don't actually need to go for kills though. When the point unlocks, Tradesmen have the position.
And that's the thing, Tradesmen don't want to be diving in too early. I mean, the Diva player's going in, but he instantly gets discorded. The problem is the Brigida player needs to get into melee combat to heal, but you also want Electric Boogaloo to come to you.
Ooh, this is a little bit tough now. And this is where it gets dicey for Tradesmen, because they have much lower healing. Oh! Flashbang headshot. Nicely handled. Traded back, though. This is a little bit tough for Tradesmen. There's a lot more healing for Electric Boogaloo. Out of the mech now, but do not discount the Bunny Blaster. It's only the Soldier. There's the shield up for the Brigida. Man, the Diva's getting... Oh! That was tough. That was so close. That was a brave Diva, like, jumping in front of the Brigida shield. And then the shield got dropped for that brief second for the Helix Rocket to come through. But still, like I said, do not discount the Bunny Blaster.
I think the thing to look out for here is kind of both teams made some variables and mistakes. So the Diva player for Tradesman probably didn't need to get that aggressive. Didn't quite get punished either. For Electric Boogaloo, you'd expect the fast D-mech there with the Zenyatta Discord. And then for Electric Boogaloo, they got pushed off the high ground by one player directly where Tradesman want to play in the low ground. So changing up now, because Tradesman did win that last round. They can't pick the same heroes. That's how Lockout works.
This is interesting. Tradesmen have no healers, but everyone here has a form of self-heal. That seems to be the approach they're taking this time around. So Electric Boogaloo, again, it's kind of on them to answer. Curious as to how they're going to pull this off with the Mei. They're setting up for this high ground again. So once again, Tradesmen, I want to see them this time not try and just lodge Electric Boogaloo. Just sit pretty on the point and wait for Electric Boogaloo to come to them.
I think Electric Boogaloo, again, with this main now, they can realistically go quite up against Tradesmen themselves. They can afford to get aggressive with this right hand and the Mei. The combo here that you want to see is the charge directly put up the wall, and then the charge gets cut short, and you can nail that player that's caught in the wall.
Just realized something with the 0 on the score there. Electric Boogaloo's like Electric Boogaloo. And now they're one down. So there we go. That's one less O, I suppose. Now they're just the aggression. This is exactly what this Tradesman comp is designed to do, right? It's a bit of a tank buster as it is. The Lucio is slipperier. It's no surprise that he was last man standing there, but Tradesman now 2-0 on the board.
The problem here is Electric Boogaloo lose maybe, because we're at the stage now where they're down to
not getting those trades, man.
Well, Tradesmen are getting more than that, and they're just taking
yeah.
everything. They're not giving anything back, and for the Electric Boogaloo side, if you're going to pick a composition that has a Mei in it, you need to be able to lock out some of those tanks, play very specific areas onto the map. Geometry becomes important, so it is somewhat surprising. You have to be very sure of what you're going to do. Electric Boogaloo, because they are kind of a match point here, playing the pharmacy is, it's a good time to bring this out.
Now just looking to get themselves set up. This is not a situation to go for that high ground play. They have control of the skies. Tradesmen are the ones who are going to have the answer, and it's going to be a little bit tough with this team comp. The Hanzo is really the only thing they've got to shoot either the Mercy, ideally the Mercy in fact, or the Pharah out of the sky.
So the thing is, for Tradesmen, MEO2 on the Winston just needs to play the bodyguard for this Hanzo. The Hanzo's going to do most of the heavy lifting here, try to take down either the Mercy or the Pharah into the skies, get that advantage. That's how Tradesmen can win.
Tradesmen are taking a bit of hurt from these rockets though, having to spend more time licking their wounds than going in for kills, and that's giving Electric Boogaloo a lot of space. It's also allowing the Pharah to slowly work up to a rocket barrage. And honestly, Tradesmen's ultimates, by comparison, aren't going to be able to have much impact on that Pharah, which is really the alpha and omega of this match right now.
I don't know why the Pharah's getting this close right now. They're taking rules for Electric Boogaloo where they're going indoors, and this is the problem. You start losing members because the Winston is effective at this close range.
The D-Mech on the D.Va as well as the Peck on the Pharah, who was coming close to that rocket barrage, and Tradesmen have it. That was not a necessary move out of Electric Boogaloo. Getting the Pharah that close to the point, it meant the Mercy had to come in as well, and then when the Pharah pulled out, the Mercy could not follow, and in that brief split second, goes down, and suddenly the balance was completely tipped in favor of Tradesmen, and Electric Boogaloo had it before that.
I think you need to be looking at the strengths of the composition, right? If you want to play a pharmacy, particularly versus the team where, to be quite honest with you, them shooting up is much more difficult than you shooting down. Play for the aerial superiority, play at the maximum range you can. Only when the point unlocks, then do you maybe get forced to play inwards onto the campus up. But before that, poke them out. Yeah. That's your strength. Yeah. That's what you have over the other team. So Electric Boogaloo just playing too close too early ended up costing them that third round. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, they're 0-3 down anyway. Tradesmen was, you know, if you're winning 3-0, this is pretty commanding.
Exactly. And look, also, I just want to note, by the time that point would have been unlocked, there would have been a rocket barrage, and that kind of speaks to another thing that I think is kind of plaguing actually both of these teams to some extent, and that's a lack of patience. We saw it there with Electric Boogaloo, but we actually saw it in the very first one with Tradesmen. They didn't get punished for it, but they were setting the D.Va up trying to harass 3v1, and it wasn't at all necessary. They had positioning. They could have actually just sat and waited.
Well, but Electric Boogaloo get another chance. Now they're playing the same composition. It's Pharmacy plus the D.Va. The D.Va here is interesting because a lot of teams we've seen so far with the Pharmacy have chosen to go for a Roadhog, and that's great because the Roadhog has a lot of ground presence, his own healing. Doomfist, I believe. You might have seen this in an earlier match, but I haven't seen one so far in Lockout.
It was briefly, and it wasn't great, but it's also not the worst. It sort of depends. With this, it actually has a lot of potential.
The Mercy here is weird for Tradesmen, I'm going to be quite honest. It doesn't really fit into what I expect the playstyle to be, and well, so far, it's going to be difficult for Tradesmen to really do anything in the sky. So Electric Boogaloo, again, you need to expect them to play for aerial superiority, and that's what it looks like.
Exactly, and that's one thing that the Doomfist can't really do anything about. Trade back, though, getting the D.Va there is decent, and they were able to res the Doomfist, who punches the Pharah out of the sky. I thought flying was meant to beat fighting type, but there you have it. The res in on the Pharah is just sort of a last ditch, but it's not going to last very long, and that actually works out really well for Tradesmen. However, as you noted, they now take the Mercy off the table for themselves. They can never run a Pharmacy themselves. Electric Boogaloo still can, so Tradesmen are going to have to try and counter it out basically every single time.
I just don't think it was the best composition for Tradesmen, yet they still win, but the reason for that is I'm of the belief now that Electric Boogaloo haven't really figured out how to play the Pharmacy themselves. They get another opportunity, but they're coming too close to the ground, allowing the Doomfist to get in, but the biggest mistake, killing the Doomfist and then allowing the res. You have to know that the opposing Mercy wants to go in for that. You need to hover over the body and prevent the res from happening. They couldn't do that, and it came back in.
And you compare that to the other side, where Electric Boogaloo didn't punish the were punished for the res on the Pharah. At any rate, though, Tradesmen again just looking to counter out the Pharmacy.
This is a big test because there's a Widowmaker and a Soldier on the other side, and while you may think, great double hit scam versus Pharmacy, no healers realistically for Tradesmen. They can kind of heal themselves, but that's not good enough. If Electric Boogaloo are good enough here with their Pharah play, they can easily poke out Tradesmen.
It's very all or nothing. Needs to get the health tops off there on the D.Va.
Oh, you got to play the angles. You have to play the geometry much better.
And the hook. And it's just kind of done from there. Honestly, that was only the biotic field from the Soldier topping off the Widowmaker there. The self-kill is there on the Roadhog. High risk, but high reward, you've got to say. Now, let's see if Tradesmen have a third comp to counter out
That's
the
the thing.
Pharmacy.
2 comps in a row on this illegal swirl so far. I haven't really been impressed with Tradesmen's choices overall. I think there are holes there that can be poked out. The bigger problem is I'm not seeing Electric Boogaloo take advantage and exploit that. If they are going to run Pharmacy, you identify this double hit scam, but you also identify there are no healers. Play for the poke damage. Every rocket shot you place down is going to really hurt.
And there you heard it, match point. Electric Boogaloo are not running a Pharmacy, and that's maybe going to hurt them a little bit because Tradesmen were having to dig deep to find counters. That being said, this should work pretty well against what Electric Boogaloo have chosen to field. I'm
a bit concerned about the damage output potential from Electric Boogaloo. They have basically May as the DPS here, maybe Brigade if they can get in the faces of Tradesmen, but also Tradesmen have their own Brigade.
A little bit tough as well. Lucio is the solo healer. Not the easiest thing to pull off, and there you go. Already the first pick. And this is it. They can just take a brawl, get the shots down. The Lucio balls Tradesmen, making that last one look easy.
A 3-0, another 3-0. I'd say this time around it wasn't quite as hard, but there are times, you'll have to admit here, when the Doomfist went down, you have to really slow yourselves down as Electric Boogaloo and consider, okay, well, this is becoming winnable for us, keep playing the advantages. The basic point here to make is Electric Boogaloo have been ahead. It's not like they've been behind the entire time. It's not like they've been losing every single fight or every single engagement, every single round, not outright. They win to begin with in some cases, but they fail to be able to close things out. They fail to be able to identify a proper winning condition, and then you have a team in the Tradesmen which so far from the 2-0 in terms of maps would tell you, and it's pretty clear evidence, that they have the experience to pull through with what I would consider is not a super optimal composition, but they're winning.
And the reality is, I think the difference is just identifying win conditions. It's something that Electric Boogaloo have failed to do time and time again. I mean, you know, you got to go back to being on Nepal there, running the Pharah in when there was no reason to. They're getting a little bit eager and then kind of losing sight of what it is they need to do in any given situation to win. They're just sort of going, oh, well, you win by getting kills, let's go in and pour on damage. But they're kind of losing a lot of the subtlety of that, of when should you go in, when should you pull back, when can you actually wait for an ultimate. And they've always missed the opportunities that they've actually had presented to them.
And the evolution I'm waiting for here, and I think when you get deeper into this sort of bracket, we're already fairly deep in, but especially with teams right at the end now waiting, like Pixel's Best is down there somewhere, you also have Manticore down there somewhere. These are the kind of teams that I expect to play a little bit more for the objective, because it's one thing where you have teams that, like you sort of said here, don't quite have the patience or the discipline. They're kind of looking for kills, maybe even sometimes in the wrong type of way, but on top of that, not only do you have to think about how do we win based on that in terms of composition, but how do you play around the objective? Teams so far are not really looking for optimization on the objective pressure itself. Look for the cap, look for cap timings. How do you play around that, and how do you take that and use it to your advantage? And, you know, the geometry of the map there becomes really important, how that changes your playstyle once the point unlocks.
Something that's been kind of interesting, because I mentioned this at the top of the day, and I've also mentioned it once or twice throughout it, is environmental kills. We haven't actually seen a lot of them. A lot of that's been because of the particular maps we've gone onto, but that's just kind of been a bit of an interesting quirk. I'd like to see more of that, like, you know, Castillo and Necropolis and all that, where you do get the environmental kill aspect of it, because that's where we do see a lot more impact out of picks like Lucio, for example, where right now Lucio sometimes struggles as the solo healer just because it's a slow top off, and if you're taking too much damage too quick, the Lucio can't keep
I don't
up.
think you could put too much stock in environmental kills here. It's one of those things that it's one of those things that either, you know, it happens or it doesn't, and it's hard to say we're going to play for environmental kills here. It's just
of course not. That's never a strategy.
It's the kind of thing where, you know, I think it either happens or it doesn't. I think players are playing carefully if it doesn't happen, which is kind of a good thing. It speaks well to the players. At the same time, you know, I think with Lucio as well, what it does give you is it's kind of like if you're playing a Brigade or a Lucio, you want to be taking engagements in a much different way. You're not sitting there taking damage such that your slow healing is not going to be beneficial for you. You're going to be playing in bursts. You're going to be playing a different type of style, and that's the teams, you know, if they can figure that out, if they can really execute that, that's where they'll do well.
Well, with that, while we are setting up our next one, we are going to go to a quick break. So sit tight. Coming up after this is more Overwatch 3 vs 3.